I know Proc Magcro for Cyrodiil build. I've seen a bunch of builds out there, but I haven't seen anyone running Wizards Respite. So that's kind of what this build is revolving around. But yeah, let's look at the stats real quick. All buffed. So we go up to 2k mag recovery. We're under 4,000 spell damage, kind of sucks, but our pen is at almost 24,000. One of our traits is actually a Mundus trait, and it should be in pen. I just haven't gotten it switched over yet, so it should be at like 23 and a half. 20, I think it's like 23.5 or 0.7, something like that. Front bar, our critical resistance should be like 35, just over 35, something like that. So pretty, like, very good stand on this build's very good. Spell penetration is like out of this world, which is great. Critical resistance is very, very high. So we do a lot of damage, we have very good sustain, and we can be pretty tanky with that crit resistance. And with some of our abilities, we can get even more tanky. Lover Mundus Stone is what I'm running. Let's see, abilities. So Blood for Blood. So this, you have to be a vampire. I would recommend stage 3 with the undead passive. It just helps. It helps a lot, especially with our crit resistance. It definitely, it kind of fills in that void that we're losing from all the mitigation we're getting from the champion point trees. And realistically, like, you can get killed by Dawnbreaker pretty easily, but that's probably going to happen if you aren't a vampire a lot of the times. So I'd recommend doing stage 3 vampire, to be honest. So let's see, Inner Light, pretty standard. Major sorcery on the front bar, plus 5% max mag, lots of damage, and crit chance, which is great, especially for Magcro and mag characters in general. It's very nice. We need major sorcery, so this is how we get it. The ability is Lackluster. We're using it for major sorcery. Blast Bones, bread and butter. This is how we combo kill people, along with the Avid Boneyard synergy. So you cast Boneyards, throw the Avid Boneyard on the ground, and then hopefully you're either running into it or you have beckoning armor, and then you blood for blood them with the synergy, right? So you cast synergy and then blood for blood, and then Blast Bones has usually gotten his stuff together and is, hitting them at that point. Back bar, Dead and Pain. This is a great ability. Slotted, reduce your damage taken, which is great this patch. We've got 3 corpse we get every time, which is great. So we get 6 seconds of major protection. Another source for, for damage reduction, which is really what we want. I've been running this since Magcro came out. Great ability, love it. Free. It's free, it gives you healing, gives you ultimate, and it gives you major protection, plus 3% damage slotted. That's a lot for literally nothing. Beckoning armor. Previous patches, I would use the other morph, just so we didn't have to run like a sustain glyph or something like that. This patch, I'm using this, obviously, because we're in, melee range, and we're using blood for blood. And it's great to pull someone into your Boneyard and then synergy them. And obviously the Colossus too, sometimes you get lucky, you can just pull someone into the Colossus. Great ability for this build, I definitely recommend it. Resistant Flesh, this is just like huge burst heals. This is really good, this patch. Healing is strong, because we don't have a lot of damage mitigation, so healing is kind of taking over the mantle. And you don't have to spam it, actually, because like if you're low and you just use this once, you just shoot straight back up to max health, which is great, and then that's usually enough time for the cooldown to wear off and the minor to file, and then you can pop it again. Spirit Guardian, highly recommend it in Cyrodiil. If you use the other morph, it can just go off and heal other people. I don't think it was a problem last patch, because they took away that or something, unless you were in a group, but if you're in a group, it can still go heal someone else. So with this, that can still happen. The heal just isn't as strong, but you always get a 10% damage reduction, which is huge, and that's 100% uptime on the damage. reduction too. Like it doesn't give that to the person it's healing. So that's kind of why I always recommend this morph, especially in Cyrodiil. Skelly adds to our body count for dead and pain, and it also ensures that our spell pen bonus is always up, because we're not always casting Avid Boneyard. We don't always have Blast Bones up, so having this guy he's always up and he's always dealing damage. So those are the abilities. I wouldn't recommend too many swaps, honestly. I will say this is probably one of the weaker abilities. Inner Light, I don't know. I wouldn't really. I'd stick with Inner Light. You could try other stuff. If you're really not into being a vampire, you could try the Hungry Scythe, especially since we're dealing with groups of people. This will give you good survivability and will help you execute multiple people. So that's definitely an option if you're really, really opposed to vampire, which, you know, I wouldn't blame you for. But so you could try this as well if you're keen on that. It's definitely a possibility. I think it also gives you extra health recovery too. Healing received. Okay, so that's pretty nice on the front bar, honestly. So your little pet will do more too. Yeah, so that's for flex slots. We went over the vampires. So we're BRETON on this class because we're a vampire. So we only get 1% cost increase because we're the BRETON. So vampire gives you 8% increase. This increases it by 7, so it's just a 1% increase. Plus we get a mag recovery. Spell resistance helps big time with flame damage, and it's doubled with a status effect, which is great. So it really helps us with that. Max mag, more damage. That's great. And it's definitely a great class to pick if you want to go the vampire route. And even if you don't, I'd still strongly suggest it's a great choice for Magcro, for sure. Sets. So Spinner's Maul. Stacking, because we're stacking penetration, so there's definitely a clause to going with the maul and having it be sharpened. You could go with a greatsword and have it be sharpened if you think that your opponent is going to have less than 20,000 resistances. And that you have to consider that people are running around with... People are running around with abilities that will take off 9k resistances. Okay, so if you're playing by yourself, I'd recommend them all. And then if you're finding that you're running into people who have more resistances, or less resistances than you have pen, then you can swap out one of your one pieces or something to that effect. It's easier to kind of manage these, and then you can just add damage that way. But it's up to you. You probably, because this Cyrodiil is more focused on group play, you could probably get away with running a greatsword and having it be sharpened. But it's up to you. I think either one works, especially specifically for group play. I noticed a lot of people are running around in fortified brass, and they'd be at like cap resistances. So it was like, all right, why are we not running? We should be running this if they're up that high. Even with that 9k off, right? That's only 31,000 penetration. So just something to keep in mind. Back bar, since we don't need spinners for healing, is one piece of critical respote. Brings us up to 4k crit resistance. I'm not 100% sure what the cap is for critical resistance. As far as I'm aware, there's nothing on it. There is no cap on it, but that might change, or it has changed since I last knew. But let's see, all light pieces, spinners with Wizard's Respite, all in pen. This is a mistake. I have to transmute. I just don't have the stone. You can, again, depending on where you think the opponents you're going to be fighting, what you think the resistances are going to be, you can you can swap this out and do, where is it, medium? Do I have the other piece? You can swap it out and just do like a heavy piece and a medium piece. There it is, choked thorns. This is also off trade. And spell pen that way. And this way you get a little extra max stats. Which is fine. You lose out on a little bit of pen, so that's another thing to consider. But with this build, because we have so much pen, like this is probably the highest pen build I've run ever. I mean, even right now we're at almost 22,000. So the only thing we're losing out on by dropping off those light pieces is a little bit of recovery, some crit. Obviously, you can see we went down 2%, and spell resistance. But other than that, we get more max mag, more max health, more stam, max stam. So that's up to you. Either one I think is viable. I think it's personal choice. It's just up to, like, it's really up to you what pieces you have. Like, just mix and match. Like, if you don't have Valken Scoria, just go with spell damage pieces. And if you're sustaining plenty, like you don't have sustain issues, just put more spell damage, or you could even do stam recovery as well if you really want to. But that's definitely, that's what I'd recommend, those options. So the monster pieces are flexible. You can either do light or one medium, one heavy. But all in pen, all max mag. And then jewelry, 2 infused spell damage, and then this should be a harmony. This should be a harmony trait. I have to get it transmuted. But this one you can do spell damage, because we already have tons of resistance. We'll go up to 2k when that popped up, and that's like 22 it's like 2200, yeah, when we're at continuous. So way more than enough. Should be plenty to sustain. So let's see. So if you're finding that you're not killing people, you can swap out Wizard's Respite for Rattle Cage. This is going to give you the most spell damage you can get out of a set. You won't get the major sorcery, so you have to keep it slotted, but you still get max health, which is great. You lose a little bit of recovery, so you can have a swap if you want to have one that has spell damage and one that has like a cost reduction glyph. That's fine. That's probably what I'll end up doing, honestly. And then we'll swap it out for put this on. Put the Rattle Cage Maul on. And then you could keep this, but you probably want the spell damage on the back bar because it's 2 pieces. So I'd probably just stick with the resto. And then what spinners? So this is just a build. If you want more damage, this is how I'd run it. Instead of the Wizard's Respite. So you can kind of pick between the two. You definitely have a lot of options just with these like 3 sets. And if you watch my other build video, you can go into the Imperial City with variants of these sets, with these like these 3 plus one other set. So definitely check that out. Food we are obviously using Bewitched Sugar Skulls, and then Tripods. Use it on the back bar. We get nice fat heals, 10k, and then it goes up to almost 11,000, which is great. CP really quickly. Champion points, we don't really care about that tab. Crit, I eventually max this out. That's what I'm working on right now. I just don't have the CP. I'd go with crit damage, and I'd go with area of effect attacks. This buffs. This does buff Blast Bones. This buffs Blast Bones, the Graveyard, and your Colossus. Previously, this used to buff Blast Bones, and on the build editor it says it does, but in-game this buffs Blast Bones. So I don't know if it's a bug, I don't really know. It's been pushed back and forth over the last several patches, so I'm not really sure which one it's supposed to be or who's correct or what's, if it's bugged or any of that. Increase your weapon and spell damage, because this buffs all our stuff, right? We don't have to worry about any causal things. This increases our critical resistance, obviously. If you wanted to with the Wizard's Respite, you could take this off and you'd go down to what you would be at if you just had all in-pin pieces. So this could be a flex slot. If you're feeling like you're too tanky, you can take this out, and you could try it here. I don't really know if that would be the best choice. Maybe this, but even like I'm not that enamored with the other choices, to be honest. So yeah, maybe one flex slot there. Here, let's see, we got max health, the recoveries is really nice. This is great for stamina sustain, where you almost always have a status effect on, and we want status effects on us. So if you can get rid of this, you definitely want to, because the longer the status effect stays on us, the longer we get this, and the longer we get that double spell resistance bonus from our BRETON passive. So that's big. And then slippery, this also helps with stamina recovery, essentially, is what it is. You could swap this out for Juggernaut. It's kind of up to you. It probably, like, I tested it a little. I've tested both of them a little bit, but I ended up going with this because you can sometimes still die even while you're CC'd, even with this 10% cost reduction. So I figured you might as well just get the stam and like dodge roll or something like that, and get the automatic break free. Subjective tree, I would recommend this. It's going to make moving around Cyrodiil a lot easier. I'd go with potion. This is really just for sustain and like money, so you don't have to spend as much and your stuff's around for a lot longer. And then this just for, when you're farming, stuff like that. This is my regular build, so obviously if it's a spare account, you probably want to focus on these two instead of some of the other stuff, but that's up to you. It's individual basis, really. But I think that's it. So this build is kind of tricky to use. I didn't mention it in my other build video, but this is definitely one of the more challenging builds, especially with this ability. High risk, high reward, or medium reward. The reward is not always there sometimes, because dodge roll is really good. This ability should probably be like 7 meters in range, something like that. The abilities are flexible, the ultimate abilities. Ravenous Goliath obviously give you a lot more sustain. If you're running in a group, you could use this. I'm not always a big fan, but it will do a lot of damage if people don't block it. Lights Champion on the back bar could be viable. I'd probably stick with Temporal Guard. We don't have that much crit. You could run the Ice Comet. The movement speed penalty is pretty devastating if someone gets hit with that. I don't think they can purge it. I think you can purge the dot. I don't think you can purge the movement speed penalty. I'm not 100% sure though. But it definitely helps when we're trying to execute people. And you're always going to hit your target with Ice Comet or whatever you cast it on. You can try Dawnbreaker. I'm just not that familiar with it. I've used it, but not exclusively. So if you're like a Stam character primary, then you just slot this. It's definitely the way to go. This badge, the dot gets buffed from our passives, and this does actually use our spell pen. This uses our spell crit, and it uses our spell critical damage. So it uses all of those. I checked it. I tested it out. So yeah, those you could flex. Some of the ultimates are generally pretty flexible. It probably more depends what you're doing in a group, I would say. But Colossus is a fine way to go, honestly. Like, it works great. And then either Dawnbreaker or Ice Comet probably is what I'd recommend. And then survivability-wise, Ravenous Goliath, Light's Dawn, Animate Blast Bones, it depends. You can use it offensively, but as long as someone blocks it, you have to really catch people off guard. Getting attacked by multiple people, it can be really tough to check the area to see if there's enough corpses on the ground. It can just be kind of stressful trying to get it cast off. But it's up to you. You will get, if you slot it on your front bar, you will get the, yes, you will get this, which is actually nothing to scoff at. I've always wanted to run it on the front bar, but like, it's tough. There's times where I'll just kind of get stuck on it. So it's really up to you and your playstyle. If you're familiar with it, I'd run it, and it works for you. I'd definitely suggest using it. If you're not familiar with it, I'd probably just stick with, you know, something like the Colossus, because you can cast it into a group and it's gonna, you're gonna hit people with this major vulnerability, and the rest of your group members are gonna get something out of it, as opposed to this, where you're, you know, you could kill people, but like if you're fighting against a group, you know, maybe you'll res some people, but again, they're situational. They're really, it's kind of like a personal preference almost. But yeah, the Colossus does help with execute. You get an extra 30%. So you go up to 60 if someone's under percent. But other than that, I think that's pretty much the build. Let me know what you think. I definitely like the Wizard's Respite. I'd probably recommend that one first, and then like test them both out. Just get both sets, and that way you can also just put like 2 heavy pieces on the body as well. You won't get the medium heavy buff, but you'll get 2 heavy. So there's a little more flexibility in this build as opposed to my other one, which I'd recommend you go check out. It's called the Bloodburst Necro for Imperial City. But yeah, that's the build video. I think that's everything, guys. So thank you, and take care. Let me know if you liked the video.